meeting between the Christmas and New Year break, too. The last one is December 19th.
Yeah, but I think we have to show it
Eight
here.
meetings left.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
Yes,
right at the
right
beginning,
away.
like, were we gonna go?
Yeah, I just called meeting order and
And
then
then,
we'll go
okay.
to executive session.
Thank you for being patient.
Of course, that's all progress you're making.
I'd like to call to order the October meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. And the first thing we're gonna do is request an executive session
I'll second that.
for a personnel
Oh,
matter.
she's gotta call, she's gotta,
He
Roll
called
call.
order, she just needs a roll call.
Let's go, man.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Moore,
here,
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yeah.
Counselor Ensel,
hello,
Counselor McFarland.
So now may we make a motion to go into executive session? I'll make a motion, we go into executive session for a personnel matter.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll send in Mr. McFarland.
We shall return.
You got some more time, don't you, to play with those numbers?
I'll be right back.
Okie dokie. That's Polish for okay. Okie dokie, that's Polish for okay.
Money for okay. That's why I went back to the show, because we've been going back and forth. I did it.
She's actually got a forward on that. That's a place to start.
I did it last week.
It is. I mean, if it's the contract with him, and it's supposed to just fix.
Do you post all of these online? Do you post all of these online?
Why not?
I think they do. I don't myself, but I think both of them are required to do it.
Okay.
So, you're supposed to, so the person talking might not.
If they want to let you guys see this stuff, I'm sure that it would be there.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
just
don't
have
see
to
some
see
of the
around
other
here.
things we get. School classes, things, it's just board over there. Our position is, sorry,
Well, I want to comment in about last week when we were discussing how the different players here, the cautions and doing projects and contracts. Because that main road project that they had about it was a
It was a professional divorce. It wasn't a combination.
And
It didn't, it was really big in the sixties into the seventies, and it's way now. In fact, recently they
required
got
him to do a
top
council and because he complained he got three inches of topsoil, got 6 inches on this side of the road. Oh, that's the road. She's not
in
getting
the sixties, seventies, and even into the eighties. But now there's
it. You know, again, she's all pictures. No, no, I know. But what I'm saying is that we hired this person to oversee the project.
Should've come over now.
Two city workers overseeing that project.
Do I have to refresh?
No, it's just in the.
So, what I can tell you is I can do my best to make sure that the guys work with this, yeah.
But do you oversee it?
I don't see the road jobs.
Well, no.
So if I hire somebody else, no, they would just look there, especially I would use.
Dragger?
Sure.
Robert, they should.
Oh, it was already there.
Where?
I must have had it there.
Throws her hands up.
Did you send me today that one?
No, that's back there.
Oh, maybe we used it, did you use it for department head meeting?
Yes.
No, maybe that's why.
So where is it?
It's over. I put it in these doc, I put everything that was not related, so
So I was
just put
just
it
trying
on
to
there.
drag it.
Just cut and paste it, or copy it.
Copy.
Yeah,
Right.
yep.
Paid
And
for
then paste.
phone,
This whole,
and they still aren't getting
Say,
Well, where is it?
just copy and paste it, it's fine.
Staying out of that
It
one.
must be, yeah, it's in there somewhere. I think it's in the documents. I don't, we don't need to do that. Put it up there, where it is.
Uh-oh. Replace something.
That's all right, I can put it back in there.
Wait, wait.
They're all in here. I just copied them. I didn't cut them. So whatever you're missing, we have
You
your
answer a lot of
budget.
your questions. I'm sure.
and Rachel came out, she took all kinds of pictures and she.
That wasn't one of them.
Oh.
I grabbed the wrong one. So 2020. No?
So it wasn't the one, it was the one you sent
There
me
it is.
10/7, yeah, well, that's why, that shouldn't be there, cause I didn't send that, must be used in this. Yeah, it's open, anyhow.
It's open, good, thank you.
Oh, I wanted to know if Richard was going to be doing his presentation from here,
Yep.
On there.
on there, so I guess he's gonna have to click through or something. Is it okay if I stick a mic right there?
Say, for example, she was back.
Because you're not gonna be on the mic, so if I can get it a little
You can
closer.
usually hear what you're talking about.
Well, so that's a little better on my Richard. Is it okay?
If you have to.
I think I have to.
Well, it's her mic, it's not our mic, it's Pat's mic.
If
But I
it's
can
an
always hear
absolute must, and if we have to do it.
Because there's gonna be a
And I had to go over last week, Dean's chair is lower because his legs are longer. I always switch them, but then I was, scoot over, I was too low. I feel like I'm
You're
in.
demanding to me.
I know, you're such a pain.
You should raise this seat up as high as it can go.
I feel like I'm the kid, the kid's table when I was in the big chair, or the low chair. Okay. Yeah, they just like sitting during there. And open.
I've never seen them, have they, when's the last time they've done
I
executive
didn't
session?
know they were both going, and I'm over there talking to Richard.
They're important. I was just confused, like, when do they ever go and executive this early? But hey, I'm not,
It's
yeah.
okay. You tell me. Oh, the bottom, yeah. Why does it send that to us every single time?
Anytime you add a new file
Yeah, oh, that's why.
to your desktop, I guess it's recognizing it as something new and it's asking you that question. I think the last time
I know.
when you put a new file out there, it wasn't doing that in the afternoon session.
No.
So somebody moved a new file in there and it's like,
I
here comes the
didn't.
question.
Yeah, it was
You
me.
used it this week.
It was me upstairs, yeah. Me and my.
Blame it on the new guy.
That's right. He's not new anymore.
I guess I am the, no, yeah, I'm not the newest, we have a lineup.
Yeah, well,
Slowly work my way to 2 years here.
Read it in 5 words.
Yeah, she left yesterday.
Read it
Her
in 5
birthday
days.
is celebrated her birthday, which is on Tuesday, but they just decided to take a trip. Someone else watching the kids. I'm not making eye contact. It's not. I'm making eye contact with you next time. I'm sure she should show up at some point.
So I got one for you.
You got one for me? And she doesn't maybe want to torture herself like the rest of us.
So yesterday was what we were saying.
Yes, she took a couple days. She told me I need to take time off now, because I'm gonna lose it all. So I had to,
Where are you going?
no, I have to figure, yeah, that's what I have to figure out. What am I gonna do with my, because I think we're allowed to go with kids over, right?
You might be different. Because you're, yeah, because I keep on that.
Well, not you, yeah, yeah. I didn't mean, I think the new rules are it's 2 days, but last year we were like some of us were allowed to more because of me and Matt were, it was our first, before our first year, so we had some extra. In January, regardless, so I have 2 days, I'm taking a Friday, then I still have like 6 days I have to take off for all of that. So I don't know what I'm gonna fit 6 days in.
Maybe go see your mom.
You think, yeah, she'd probably like that.
That's what I would say. Although I saw him last week and now it's the other weekend this week, so it's far to that. Why do they spread that out?
Yeah.
And then they over Thanksgiving too.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Well, that's the thing, it's like at this time of year, it's like I'll go from Thanksgiving to Christmas is right here, so it's like, that's more than, that's more than enough. My mom had to eat these times.
Yeah.
So what are they talking about in here, Beth?
I don't.
Yeah.
John, I don't wanna say anything out of line, but it might be you.
Maybe you, see, you were talking
I
too much.
love being the center of attention.
We
Doesn't
know.
matter what it's for.
Have the, tour bill with the inner,
What's that?
with, Camden.
Nate Hagan,
Yeah,
Tasmanian dinner.
yeah. Not to get away. Did you show, did you take him the full tour of the?
Yeah, but.
Can I ask,
Because we
how
were running out of-
excited did he get with?
How what?
He gets excited.
How excited, that's what I was trying to get
What was
at.
his favorite thing?
That I had gone to the extreme effort of computing that there were approximately 17 septillion bacteria in the aeration tank. Septillion would be 10 to the 19th, perhaps? eh?
That's.
Ira probably knows that.
I don't
know.
Richard, could you say?
He actually knew a lot about waste treatment.
So, yeah,
It's just-
pardon me?
Could you say
Yeah, they do a lot of work for,
Pardon me?
people hard to get, and,
yeah.
hard work.
Yeah, it did hurt my feelings.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4,
You've been to
5,
the
6,
cogen
7,
plant
8,
you did
9,
before
10.
and said
Okay,
that,
thank
Ryan
you.
Parks out
Here?
was
Can you hear me now?
smartest guy in the world. Oh, boy. You know Ryan? He plays basketball sometimes.
Oh, okay.
All right, so,
Okay.
so I couldn't give Ryan a hard time today.
How'd that go today? I'm excited to come back in a couple weeks.
So, we're gonna bring.
I know, it'll be so much.
They got a broccoli
Bring your
sauce now.
Cutler.
Overall.
You guys are just lucky that I'm kind of rusty, so I kind of came this immediately on me.
Yeah, well, so I'll rewind the tape. 3 weeks ago, the old guys dominated the young guys. One of the old guys, I'm not gonna say who, thought it was good to maybe talk some trash.
Sounds like I don't know.
So the young guys came back 2 weeks ago and they brought the whoop ass. They laid it on us.
I'll teach you.
So he's taking it down a little bit.
To be fair,
We've spoken to the guy that was talking trash. And
John, so.
it's been,
Self-talk in the mirror, right?
it's been uber competitive, so. But,
It's good.
they beat us 5 in a row today. But the last game, Chuck King, for the whole game.
Okay.
We pulled out all the tricks and all the cheating, we could muster.
Just the grab.
We prevailed, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're only gonna play half court, we're not playing full court. That would be a game changer.
Those things we could.
Great example.
On Mayor Pro Tem's behalf, we're returning from executive session, discussed the personnel issue, and no action was taken during the executive session.
Personnel involving a particular person.
Personnel issue involving one particular person.
So we will resume our October Finance and Budget Committee meeting. And I hope all of you've had a chance to read Chamberlain Mark's budget narrative. He did an excellent job, tried to anticipate some of our questions, and at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Mark.
All right. This is the budget narrative. I think the question was asked if these are gonna be posted on the internet, on the website, so they will be available.
Yes.
I don't know if we went pour over this, or are there any questions about it? The main points were the change in the overtime that I have to build in at 3% of labor because we're just not able to keep up with the customer requirements at the end of the day.
So here's just a little technical point. If you're at the mic, I know you would need somebody to help you here, but at least someone who couldn't read the report could hear your synopsis of it if you stood at the mic, Chamberlain Marks.
If you wanna go to the front of the room,
Can you enlarge that a little bit too, Mike, when you get up there, please?
You have a copy in your, also, in your packet.
Still doesn't help me be able to read.
So
Not with eye drops in.
that's what's gonna happen.
In fact,
Thank
it's
you,
probably even
Richard.
harder.
Sorry to throw you a curveball there.
Let's see if this makes it bigger. Easier to see, no? We can go a little higher. Is that good? Agree?
Thanks again.
So you want me to read this?
Whatever
Okay,
you want
this
to
should
do
take
with
up
it.
a
Or
good
give
20
us a
minutes.
really good
No,
Reader's
no,
Digest
just-
version of it.
Yeah, just the highlights is fine.
Well, 2019's been a better year for us because we finally got the move settled. There was a lot of problems with the setup that we're facing downstairs, and it's all coming together at this point, becoming more efficient. One last move we're making is the mayor suggested to have our personnel office established in the old assessor's office. That's being done this week. So we'll have the personnel payroll specialist down there for HR issues, so people have privacy, and they're not in the same room as people are doing utility billings and machines running and so forth. There's gonna be an outer office in that where we can host the healthcare analyst for half a day each Wednesday. She's gonna sit down there with Julie because they coincide with what they do with healthcare issues, healthcare related changes. And all the files will be in there, and so it'll be a much better setup. It was the mayor's suggestion last year, so we finally got to doing that. And the furniture from the bank that we're being able to cannibalize for the city before it gets sold at auction or destroyed is helping quite a bit with this as well.
Nice.
So,
I've got designs on one of those 3 rooms, so don't use the entire space out. I know how people tend to stretch out once they get in a new space.
I'll let you fight with Julie over that. She's claimed it all. But if it's just for storage,
It's just for storage.
yeah, there's plenty of room in the old title storage room where they had some 80,000 plus documents that were copies of titles of city property amassed over the years. They've been all moved out to Public Works. They're in storage out there, so there's a ton of room in that room that you can use. So that was part of how we've improved over 2018 as well. We've gotten rid of the 2 personnel disruptions that we suffered from. Got a good staff now, and they're well-trained. Our AP person now has been here for a year, and we're doing so much more accounting through AP than we never did before. It eliminates doing 600 journal entries a year, which was a total waste of time for an accountant to sit there and do that kind of work. So now, you know, she's right in line with all what has to be done there. And we have 4 staff at the front and a new hire, which is very efficient at performing the customer service tasks. We also have eliminated all the manual off-the-books accounting systems that existed in this place that were extremely extensive. Coordinating all that into being within the business system has been a tremendous efficiency for us as well. And last of all, you know, the right staffing size for the city, having that last person added as a clerical support staff has paid benefits last year and this year now, and that's finally working to the way it should have been, going back to correcting a problem that happened in 2009 when I lost that position. So we're back in business. So those 3 factors provided, you know, for working better within the 19 budget, and it looks like we're doing well with that, staying within our costs, except for the overtime. The overtime will have to increase next year to 3% of payroll because we just can't keep up with the customer demands at the end of the day to keep us past 4 o'clock, our closing time, as well as compliance reporting overtime requirements. But even with a 3% increase in the overtime, we only are going up 0.5% overall in our budget. And I think I summarized in there what those items are. Mostly it's the overtime, and we do have some reductions in other areas because we've had cost efficiencies. And it's all detailed in this report. The one issue that we need to do something about right away, and I've talked to the mayor and the finance committee members about it, is the inserting machine in our utility billing process. We have an old machine that's no longer supported by the manufacturer, can't really get manufacturer service on it, and as well, you can't source parts unless you find them in a cannibalized situation from an old machine stock that somebody has on hand. So we're looking to replace that. But I think we can replace it and reduce our cost for leasing that machine by about $2,500 a year. So that's gonna help recover some costs that we're gonna have to increase our budget for $2,000 in the contract services line, because we have $16,000 budgeted in there for Socrata in 2020. But Open Gov was the choice, and that's an $18,000 a year cost, so we need to add $2,000 for that. Plus, I also need to add $3,000 for the Tyler Technologies software application annual renewal or triannual renewal. They're renewing their prices for the next 3 years, and it's a 3% increase, which is about $3 grand.
What is Tyler
Which of
Tech?
am I? Oh, I'm sorry.
Munis.
Munis.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
Am I looking at this wrong? Currently, with the current machine, we have a lease, an annual lease of $67.52.
Right.
And if we just replace the machine
I
and
got-
lease a new machine, it would be at 66,
Right.
64.
But I've gotten a better piece of information today. We can actually source one, government contract pricing for $21,000. So if we buy it and finance it over 5 years ourselves, we'll save $2,500 a year. $4,200 a year, as opposed to $67.52. And it's a new machine with all the new features. It even incorporates a feature where it'll take and stuff 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-part invoices into one envelope. It'll still get mailed at the same price as a single invoice under first-class postage rates. So that's been saving us a lot of money, but we've presently had to hand stuff these things.
Does that,
Which takes 3 to 4.
does the machine also do the mailing Pitney Bowes cancellation? Or is that separate? The sorting machine?
The sorting machine is a NeoPost machine, it's not Pitney Bowes, but it does all the inserting. If you need to put anything in the utility bills to send to our customers, you know, for an announcement for a rec.
So they still have to be canceled, mailed? That machine doesn't do any of the postage?
No, we have a postage machine. That,
So
you
it's
know,
separate?
the inserter feeds the postage machine. You can have like a complete process going at the same time.
So it's
Pitney
separate
Bowes
from
is
the
a mail
postage
machine,
Right.
and NeoPost is the
It's a
inserting
stuff-
machine.
okay.
So, what we're looking to do is get a $1 buyout on the old machine, keep that as a spare in case of a
What's the
breakdown.
typical lifespan on those?
The one we've been using right now has been operating for 9 years, and we pound on it. Put 120,000 mailings through it a year. No, excuse me, that's just the invoices. I think it's another 40,000 a year for the reminder notices. So 160,000 pieces a year. I've done maintenance on it myself when we've had to, and it's well built. It's easy to work on. It's a good machine, as opposed to the Pitney Bowes machine we used to have, where the service agent that was always fixing it used to stuff more of our invoices to be mailed than he was actually working on the machine. He would come and help us hand stuff everything, because the machine had never worked. So, anyway, we've got to do something about that, and I kind of have the impression that the finance committee and the mayor have said that it makes sense to get the new machine. But even if we do, it's gonna be a cost reduction.
If you can expect that 9-year life on the new machine, then it's definitely a good purchase.
The machines are built in Holland, and they're well manufactured, well engineered.
And you have that old machine you hope to have as a backup as
Yep, looking to get $1 buyout option on that and keep it on hand. And I know how to work on that one. So, other than that, we've had some more time available from the personnel improvements to be able to work on projects. And the one project we've been talking about, seems forever, is our gateway, which was finally fully tested, and it's ready to go live. And we just heard this week that it's been deployed to the live environment. This is after, what, 2.5 years we've been trying to get this in?
Sure, but what are we talking about? Gateway?
A gateway, which is an on-site feature, our website, online feature for processing payments, where we redirect through a shopping cart to our credit card merchant. So the people can go into our website, put their tax bill in the shopping cart, put their utility bill on the shopping cart, and then say, please pay, and it redirects. And the processing of the credit card or the e-check transaction takes place with the credit card merchant's website, not ours. It redirects it to that. The convenience fee is added on, the customer gets a confirmation notice, and the bill's paid for. But it's an instant update to their records in the city's records right now. It's not going that way. We're redirecting to a file that we send to our credit card merchant so that we can upload a file to post back. But this way, it's gonna be a direct update. It's also gonna have a different credit card charge rate, which we talked about last spring. We're going from $4.95 for every $400, which averages 1.24% to 2.25%. Now, the 2.25% is going to take place when you get to a bill that costs $44.45, because 2.25% of that is $1. So everything up from that is gonna be more than $1. But everything that's $44 and under is gonna be a $1 charge to the customer as the convenience fee. So the smaller bill payers are gonna get an advantage by having this change in our website, as well as changing our credit card merchant service costs. Higher paying customers are gonna, be charged a little bit more than they normally do. So this feature is gonna make it much easier for our customers to get online, pay their bills, and if they want to, they can also set up what's called an auto pay feature, where they can get online and say, here's my bank account information, here's my ABA information for my bank account, which is encrypted so we don't see it, and we can't see it. And if they do set that up, they'll get an email notification that says, here's what your bill is for the month, and on the due date, it's gonna be taken out of your account directly. We just send a file to the bank, and the bank does an ACH transmission and pulls all the funds back in. It has to happen on a banking day too. The due dates for our invoices can no longer be on a weekend or a holiday, so they have to occur on a banking day. So we've got that all set up for next year. We're doing some final testing to make sure everything is gonna work right, so this has been deployed and live, and I think we're gonna have it available to our customers probably by next week. But we're gonna send out a mass email, lets everybody know it's available and it's ready to go.
Now, Richard, will those same fees be the same if I come into the finance
Yep.
office downstairs?
Yep, do a face-to-face transaction, yeah. If it's 44 or less, it's $1. Above that is 2.25%, or you can do an 80-cent e-check.
And can I pay parking tickets through the online?
We're gonna have to work on setting that up, because we don't have the parking tickets actually going through Munis, like our property tax bills and utility bills. They go through a separate system. There is a separate kiosk downstairs that Ethan has set up, and we're trying to get a direct connection for it, where you can actually go right into that kiosk and pay your parking tickets. Right there. So, anyway, that's an efficiency we've been looking to get for a long time. It's taken 2.5 years because our developer didn't want to do it at first. We had to coerce him into doing it by paying him $18,500. We're sharing the cost of that between us and our credit card merchant. And then they had to make us wait till they deployed it in a different software version. And then we had a conflict of two technical staffs at two different let's say, application sites, arguing over who was right. We finally resolved all that, so now we're finally ready to go with this. And a lot of people are gonna want the auto pay feature. We already know that there's at least 500 people waiting to set up for that.
How do you know that people told you?
They've been asking about it every day for the last 2 years. I've got a guy that comes to my door once a month and knocks on the door and says, "Are you gonna get this done or aren't you?" It's like, "Yeah, we're working on it." That's what you told me last month. No, it's not Jeff. So, but anyway, so that's the summary. I think you've got the numbers, and I think you also have the details that make up the different budget items.
This cover sheet's really helpful.
You like that?
Yeah.
And the one line in there that's gonna change is the one that says 129,095 in data processing contract services. That's one's gonna go up $5,000 with a council-approved budget adjustment to the mayor's budget.
I see 116,000 already. You said it was at 109?
Should be 129.
129,
I was looking at the wrong, okay.
That's all right. The 116 is the,
That's the Munis.
that's the munis, but that's inaccurate by 2,000 because it was assuming Socrates. Socrates is gonna go, have a different line item for OpenGov at 18,000, so take 16 off that, at 18 on another line, but then at 3,000 for munis price upgrades that are gonna be fixed for the next 3 years.
And do you anticipate any problems incorporating OpenGov software into your systems?
Not a lot. It's gonna take some time. We're gonna work with them as far as interfacing with munis accounts and mapping and so forth. Just a matter of how much ancillary information is gonna have to be added to do everything that the people that wanna push a button and say, okay, I get the answer right down to the end detail. How much more of that we're gonna have to enter in is kind of unknown at this point. They're gonna pull in a lot of details, but I don't know how much of it they can actually capture and make available on a drill down basis, but they say they can do a lot with it, so we'll see.
You rock, Richard.
Anything else? I've got some overheads that we can take a look at that show where the council level budget is right now.
This one?
In the third quarter.
Oh, okay.
Hold on just a second. All right, this is a report right from Munis, and it's 54 pages, which is a lot of detail, obviously. And I think the first 19 pages is the general fund. Now, what this report is showing is the 2018 actual results. Our original budget for 19, what we revised the budget to be during 19. Here's what was requested for 2020 by the department heads in compiling the data for the mayor's budget. Here's the mayor's budget column, and then this is the current level I've rolled forward to for the common council.
We haven't made any amendments yet.
The only amendments that have been made to the common council budget so far are the ones that I had information for about, okay, state retirement. Here's the mayor's budget. And the state retirement for the employees' retirement system is down from 334 estimated at 316, 310. This is what the actual billing and analysis is gonna be. Unfortunately, the police and fire has gone way up versus what was anticipated. That's mostly because of the fire contract modifications.
So
And-
some of that is permanent, some of that is temporary.
Yes. We believe about 120,000 of that is just a blip in this year's reporting requirement as a catch-up for the retro pay. But it will be about $100,000 increase in the normal level for the fire raises going forward. The other reduction is going back to the same level of healthcare costs as in 2019. At first, we had 4.6% increase budgeted, and that was this figure. requested rolled forward to the mayor, now it's back to $4,459,000, which is what we budgeted for 2019. Not sure why this
Which more or
percentage-
less offsets the increase with the fire and police.
Close, pretty close with the retirement changes. Yeah, this is a $144,000 pickup, and the other's a $220,000 reduction.
And if I understand it, that's because Burnham and Lambert, our consultants, recommended that we keep that.
Yep. At first, they had a 4.6% estimate by their actuaries, but now they revised that and said that actually it looks like there should be no cost increase. So we put it back to this level. Now, this percentage, I believe, is measuring this against the actual cost for 2018. So that's the only change, or changes that I've made, and it's made for a difference, or, bottom line, we were saying it was 367,000 requested. Mayor's budget level 465,603, and now it's adjusted back down to 389,566, and waiting for any changes to go forward. And if you wanted to see the actual impact of the retirement, here's what the actual was. Budget for 19, revised budget for 19, once again requested mayor and council. So it's a $2.8 million cost for retirement, which when you compare this back to, I like to go back and compare this to 2012, when it was $1,200,000. It's amazing how much that's gone up in just a short period of time because of the investment results that were so disappointing for the New York State Retirement Fund. And also the other change is in the healthcare. And of course this is across the board so everybody can see all the different healthcare costs for the different funds. 0% versus 19, 2.2% less than 2018. Or greater than 2018, excuse me.
Did they all decrease? Pretty much.
Yeah, from the mayor's budget, they all did, except for, the problem I had that we did a budget adjustment for already in 2019 was definitely had the cost for the rec complex fund under budgeted, and so that's been corrected as well. But that just merely took 10,000 of the general fund line and put it into the rec complex line. So overall, it's still the same total. That's about it, unless there's any questions.
Anybody have any additional questions?
Richard, could you go back to the previous page there where you had the number that we're looking at, right, yeah, right there, the 380, is it 389?
Oh, this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that a
Can you,
surplus?
can you, yeah, can
Yes.
you, okay.
surplus, that's right.
Can you enlarge that a little bit?
Sure.
I'm having a hard time seeing it, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Now, this is just the general fund section. Once again, if you go through this, here's recreation. And they're currently at a $7,000 deficit. And that's because of this increase in the health insurance. It's netted out the other changes. Unfortunately, I had to do that one because it's where we adjusted this year's total to. It's gonna be the expected outcome. Now, the next one is parking. That's at a surplus of $776. The water fund. Is expected to be 22,000, almost break even. One thing we have to look at, which John has been reminding us of, is the water rate changes for high impact users. Something we've discussed, and I think that would add about $400,000 to $500,000. John, do you remember that estimate?
Yeah, it was at least that much,
To revenue.
yes.
Yeah. So that
Approximately how many high usage users do we have, John?
Well, it depends how you define them.
Well, how are we defining them based on the charge?
We're doing it by service size. And the concept we came up with, the mayor and Richie D and I, was to look at the potential for users to exert a demand. Because we have to design our capital projects and our staffing levels and our treatment plants around the demand that can possibly be exerted. So our present rate structure doesn't necessarily recover those kind of costs. So the theory was to do it by size of service. The bigger your service line, the more of a demand you could exert on the system.
Okay.
So the way the draft proposal is now, people who have 1-inch services or larger that are, except for single-family residences, would fall into the, I guess, the definition of a potential high-demand user. And the cost per month will slide up based on the size of your service. So, I don't know, 1-inch line might have been $10, $20, something like that, whereas an 8-inch line might be several hundred.
Okay, thank you.
John, when was the last time this group had a rate increase?
On the usage rate, I think the last time the water usage rate was adjusted, the cost per thousand was 2013, I think.
It's
There
been a
might have
while.
been one in IIC since then, for one of the capital projects. On the sewer side, I think it's probably closer to 10 years since there's been an adjustment to the usage rate.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, John. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay.
He's used to it.
He recovers well. John is always ready. Sewer fund? It is looking at a surplus right now of only 7,400, 7,500. And library is next. Oh no, that's debt service. That's always gonna be zero, excuse me. I missed one here. This is library at 7,480. I went right past our sewer fund. It's at 34,185 surplus. And MLD is the last piece of the puzzle. And they're currently at 131,000 surplus. So the total surplus citywide is 578,619 with the total expenses and revenues. And of course, this is comparing the requested versus the mayor's versus the council level budget.
But that includes water and sewer funds too,
This is
correct? That's
everything,
not
yeah.
general fund.
This is everything across the board.
Now, can you go back to the general fund total?
Sure.
389.
It's 389. But the biggest difference, though, the most telling numbers I see here are the 2018 or 2019 original budget and the 2019 revised budget. The budget was 501,000,
Yep.
almost 600, or almost 502,000,
That's right.
and the actual was just under 200,000.
Oh,
So-
this is the original budget and this is the revised. So we've revised the budget upward for the changes that we've had to go through for this year for budgeting purposes. Now, that's not necessarily how it's gonna play out. Obviously, when you wanna see how it's gonna play out, you wanna look at the results year to date. Of course, you're seeing that we've got good net results for surplus at this point in the year, except for the water fund, unfortunately. And compared to last year, we're ahead. But the way to really analyze this, and the mayor asked about, is there a way to show what's left to be spent? The way to look at that quickly is to say, okay, I've got these expenses left, this is available budget, here's what I have left to spend, and that's 7,306,000, but add this back to it, so make it about 8.1 million, because this is just a transfer to capital funding. It's coming out of cash, yes, but it's not a real legitimate operating budgeted expense. And then you look at what you have left in revenue, plus your general fund surplus so far, and that'll give you an idea of where we're gonna wind up at the end of the year, provided what we're budgeting here is how it's gonna actually work out. So you're looking at about, 3.1 million versus 6.3 million. I think that's a loss of 1,000,008, but add that back to this, and you're ahead 400,000. So that's a good way to measure where we think we're gonna wind up, and we do that with every fund in these results.
I have no idea what you just did, but.
Yeah,
Shows you how a bean
Yeah,
counter thinks.
I like the last sentence, I'm holding on.
Really slow. Do it one more time.
Do it one more time slowly.
No, that's fine, I came up with.
I like the results, not
400,000
necessarily the means.
It's the way to look at the report and get the information that you're saying, okay, where are we gonna be at the end of the year? What's the
Right.
anticipation? So it's just simply saying, here's your available budget lines, but add this back because this is an anomaly. And then take that from this and add that to that result, and you'll see where you're gonna be. That should be about 400,000.
Take your word for it.
About 445, I think.
You're thinking like a bean counter. I like it. So that works that same way, you know, so you look back on the financial statements that we sent out for September, and you can look at that for every one of the funds. And
So your best guess is we're coming in about 80% of our budget of the surplus.
yeah,
From,
yeah,
it's not bad.
yeah. And depending on how we economize and how revenue might come in higher than expected, it could be better than that.
Have we had any updates on sales tax at all, Richard?
About 4% ahead of last year. 4.3.
Has that been calculated in the revenue,
It's in the actual results through the end of September.
but not for the full year?
No, no. What's in there for the full year,
Well, where you said for the rest of the year, what we were looking at for revenue.
non-property taxes, here's what you're looking at so far. 2,052,000, and that has not been, no, the budget hasn't been adjusted for that additional revenue, so that's gonna be a pickup.
Okay.
And those are the kind of things that are gonna help us come in at a better result.
Another way to look at it is we're coming in, I think this year, maybe last year as well, within about 1% of where we thought we'd be by the end of the year. I mean, there's pluses and there's minuses, but the budgeting has been really, really quite accurate in the whole scheme of things, because we really work hard to try to anticipate things that would otherwise have been a surprise.
And when I review the budget report that our accounts payable processing comes up with each week, she shows me all of the line items that were over in the budget. There's only two in there right now. One for unemployment and another one that we're doing a budget adjustment for tonight. So it's clean, very clean and very, very close to the best.
So we're actually very close to what our projection was that when we set the budget last November of having a $500,000 surplus in the general fund. We'll be pretty close to it.
We're good.
So far, so good.
We're good at what we do.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Anytime.
The only other item on the agenda for the Finance Committee is to move the resolutions to the regular meeting agenda, and I will make a motion that we do that.
Beth, I'm just talking, it looks like there was a typo where one of the, item number 4 on the committee agenda, for some reason never made it to the actual agenda. So, if, per your resolution, it'll push it forward, but we'll just have to take careful notes and deal with it on the fly,
I'll read it at the end.
read it at the end during the actual meeting.
Okay, okay.
If you don't mind, a
Roll
little,
call.
a little bit of discussion, would you mind?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Either have it now or have it.
Do your first and second one.
Yep.
I made the motion and Jeff seconded.
As you see, Mr. Miller's office is making progress towards the various steps we have to take towards demolition, creating new parking. As you see, the county parking lot is already being developed as we we speak. I think by the time we add everything up for all the parking related expenses, including Broad Street, Pavone lot, county lot, it might end up costing the city around $1 million plus or minus. We do have the offsetting grant from the FRB for most of that. And then when you divide that between, I think you're expecting about 285 spots in total, or 295 spots in total. So we're looking at a cost per spot of around $3,000 to $3,500 per spot, which is less than half the benchmarks you've been using for what surface parking costs. So you've done an incredible job at really doing this in a really cost-effective manner, and the taxpayers of the city are going to be essentially insulated from these costs because of the FRB grant that's coming
And just say
forward.
what that is.
Financial Restructuring Board grant that they've offered after some discussion with your office and us and them. They're putting, I think it was $900,000 towards this project? $825. So we're mostly there. So that's really good news, and the biggest credit is many of the things that you've gone out and gotten RFPs for, they're coming in well under, and the county's collaborating really closely with us. So it's really created an awful lot of economies, and taxpayers should be very grateful for that. That's the only thing I wanted to point out on the agenda for tonight.
Any other discussion on agenda items? Roll call?
Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed,
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Finance and Budget Committee meeting.
No old business or new business you want? to
Oh.
leave?
Did I leave that out? I'm sorry. Any old business? Any new business? At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Finance and Budget Committee meeting for the month of October.
Second that?
Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed,
Yes. We have a few minutes to take up any items on the formal agenda for the common council tonight in this work session. Is there anything anybody would like to have some extended conversation over, or have any questions for the various department heads that might know a little bit more about these items? We can also entertain any council reports. You have the usual routine reports in your agenda. I think that early this afternoon also, Joe McMahon sent around some of his progress reports. Did you have a chance to send those to the councilors yet? I think there's 4 status reports in some of the buildings that or houses that he's monitoring. We'll get that to you. Any additional reports, beginning with governance strategy and city operations, Councilor Armstrong?
Yes, we had our Plattsburgh Sustainability Task Force meeting last night, and I published the minutes, and I requested that Ms. Garland include those in the page on climate smart communities of our website. I think I gave her the backlog of what we've done, but basically, Ethan and I had requested of the task force that they review sustainable procurement policies from New York State and other places, review them, give us feedback, and then hopefully by next meeting, which will be November 13th, 4 o'clock at City Hall. We will begin to kind of use the best of all of those and come up with a procurement policy. Ethan and I also reported out that we've begun ticking away at our action lists and are in the process of documenting those for the state. That's it.
Thank you. City infrastructure, Councilor Moore?
Well, I just wanted to comment on that Gene Arthur mural. It's really striking. When the project gets finished on Protection Avenue, that will really stand out. I just had one question on Protection Avenue, though. It's starting to look like you may not get that completely paved this year, may have
Oh,
to.
sure, we will, they're still
We'll
aiming
have
to,
to time to do it before the cools up, yeah.
yeah, they're still fully aiming to do that. They should be able to start on the road work pretty soon, the electrical work is just being completed.
Oh, good, good news. That's all I had.
Finance and budget, Counselor Kelly?
Well, we just had our monthly meeting, so really nothing to add. I just wanted to remind all of the counselors that your budget adjustments that you'd like to recommend, Mr. Marks should have those by November 14th at the latest. If you conduct your budget hearing as we did today, and you know what the recommendations are, and Mr. Marks had most of his own recommendations, so, and I think we're all in agreement with those, but those will be included in the list of budget adjustments to make, council level budget adjustments to make.
What date was that again?
The 14th, so that Mr. Marks can incorporate that into the final budget, and we should be able to vote on that on November 21st.
And so each committee will have an opportunity to do one more cycle of committee meetings before you have your finance committee meeting next month.
Well, we'll certainly hear from the Governance and Strategy Committee. They are reserved for November 7th.
Right.
Yeah, we have to do all our other departments, like community development and.
During that meeting as well, and then by that time, you know, I forgot to include the fact that we've been meeting and discussing our various options regarding rec complex, and those recommendations will be ready at that time.
Great.
The
Okay.
only ones on the decision list right now are whether we increase the water revenue or what John's discussing.
Yes, I think we should be prepared to, sometime between now and the 14th, we should be prepared to approve or deny that rate increase.
And then the other one that's on the list is the ones I just brought up about OpenGov.
Yes,
And our munis
Yeah.
application increases.
yes.
That's all that's on the list so far. The ones I put in were ones that are demanded by, you know, being billed for healthcare lower and we're gonna be charged higher.
Right, right, but you got those captured, so
They're in, yeah.
that's good, that's good.
Just a quick procedural point on the topic you just mentioned regarding that rate increase. It does require a local law change. So if we have the local law drafted, we can just introduce it as we would any local law. So there's a little bit of lead time left for that.
Okay, we better do that soon then, perhaps as early as next week.
Okay,
That's it for the Finance and Budget Committee.
thank you. Public Safety, Counselor Gibbs.
Well, Counselor Ensel and I met last night to talk about the police and fire budgets, and I asked for a meeting next week before the Thursday meeting so that we could talk to department heads. I know there was an email sent, but I didn't get a chance to open it, Beth.
It's set for
Wednesday, okay, so we're gonna be meeting Wednesday with Chief Ritter and Chief Lawless to talk about their budgets, because we're gonna have the budget hearing for those aspects of public safety on next week's agenda. And then on the 31st, we're gonna finish it off with code enforcement. So we're gonna have a very direct conversation about budget adjustments before Thursday's meeting, so we can get that all finished up.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Superior Public Library, Counselor Ensel.
Yes, on Tuesday, it was, I met with Director LaChapelle and Ms. Peratt, and went over their budget, looked at their proposed budget, and they are all set to have their narrative ready for the October 31st, preparation of the October 31st meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. And MLD Board President, Counselor McFarland.
No updates at this time.
Well, with your indulgence, then we can begin tonight's council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong,
Here,
Counselor Kelly.
Here.
Counselor Gibbs.
Here.
Counselor Ensel.
Here.
Counselor McFarland. Counselor Moore.
Here.
Just a couple items to report. As you know, this is the time of year for shared services discussions with the county and a state governor's initiative sponsored program. We're participating in a couple of ways this year, primarily through the work of John Ruff's office in shared services, lending our expertise at cost to various other municipalities and entities that can benefit from it. So I appreciate that outreach of your expertise and better leveraging your staff and actually even giving them experiences they wouldn't be able to otherwise have. So I think it's good all around and really what the shared service is designed for. We have been looking at a couple of other initiatives and exploring whether we could do those this year as well. With some public hearings occurring at the end of this month and the final approval from the various entities occurring, I think, in November 6th or 7th through the county offices. I'm also really pleased, of course, that OpenGov is moving forward. We expect to sign the contract tomorrow or Monday on that. We've got a SUNY intern that's willing to help us do some of the transition work over the balance of the year. So we're hoping to actually have results from OpenGov maybe before Councillor Armstrong retires from the council, because this has obviously been her committee's baby for quite some time. So it's going to be nice to see that come to some sort of completion or beginning of completion before the end of this fiscal year. That's all I have. Thank you.
Result of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on October 10th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Armstrong, second by Councillor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Result of the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending October 16th, 2019 in the amount of $59,154.98 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Kelly and second by Councillor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. During work sessions, you presented your various committee reports. Are there any additional committee reports at this time? Seeing none, resolved the reports as listed are hereby ordered, received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councillor Ensel, second by Councillor Gibbs. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills offered by the Common Council for the week ending October 18th, 2019 in the amount of $233,575.74 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the part of the meeting where we ask any individuals from the public to please come address the council on items that are on the agenda tonight. There will be another comment period for any mutually interested items at the end of the meeting. So this is just for agenda items only. Seeing none, let's please continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council authorizes the mayor to sign a right of entry property license agreement with Lake Forest Senior Living Community Incorporated to enter City of Plattsburgh property located on Ohio Avenue and Nevada Oval adjacent to the property owned by Lake Forest to perform vegetation maintenance work. The intent is to create window views of the lake while avoiding clear cutting and also avoiding removing any trees which may cause erosion of the lakeshore area banks or impact the structural integrity of the rail lines.
Moved by Councillor McFarland, second by Councillor Moore. Discussion.
I don't know how Councilor Armstrong feels about this, but I guess I have a little bit of an issue with this request. As we all know, the damage that was created along the bike path and the walking path, earlier this year. And I guess I have difficulty approving this at this point.
Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously, we've, had a bit of a conflict about this, but I do believe that, the provisions that were, revised and restated in our city policies regarding, this kind of license agreement, will protect the city. And I know that Lake Forest has listened to the city, and I hope and predict that they will be good citizens in the way in which they conduct themselves in order to do this. And I just have a question. I know Mr. Defias here. I did read in the agreement that there was a plan to plant some things that would not require maintenance. Would you just care to elaborate about what kinds of plantings that you're thinking of?
I have not seen the agreement. So
Oh, okay.
I deal with that.
All right. So,
I can touch on a little bit
sure,
on it.
would you?
So we, in the past, we've entered into various, or similar license agreements with other adjacent landowners. This one is similar to the extent the framework is there and it requires insurance and proper notice like the other agreements. But we did add additional agreements here where there's specifically articulating that shall be no herbicide or pesticide
Exactly.
on the property, with the preference for, mechanical means to remove any vegetation. We also have a which authorizes, with notice, the forest and mowing, shrubbery that would hopefully avoid your vegetation.
Right.
So it's not a requirement necessarily, but it would be
Right.
an opportunity for them to do that.
and, I think in spite of, maybe some reservation that you're expressing, that, we can go forward in good faith, and we have the proper protections in place. And truly, you're willing to do this for your residents is something that can, in effect, benefit our citizens at large. If that area is clear of shrubbery that tends to get overgrown and obscures the view of the lake, that is something that, as a public citizen, you're gonna love if that's eliminated and replaced with something that's better. So in terms of just the quality of life that we can enjoy along the Terry Gordon path, as long as you leave the proper shading, don't disrupt the ecology too much, put in perhaps permaculture, wildflowers, shrubbery that, will maintain the sight line of the lake, that's all good. And I'm willing to trust that we can go forward.
I have a question. Will this be done in the same stretch of land around I guess I wonder why you need to go back and do more remediation, although there's second remediation is much more appealing than if you went to using an herbicide. Why do you need to go back and do this additional work where you've already sprayed the Roundup?
Because it won't last. We foresee having to go over at least once a year, every year, in order to keep that maintained,
Okay,
to clear, the weeds and the brush and scrub.
so this additional cutting that you're asking for now will take place where the area was sprayed
Was sprayed.
before,
Right.
is that correct?
So you'll clear the debris that remains.
Right, we cut along, what was sprayed in one section on
In one.
Ohio. We
Mhm.
haven't touched, Nevada Oval, that stretch until, we get clearance for that.
Good.
And so
I appreciate
Now,
your
is this
recognition.
permission for a long-term
This is a
agreement?
one-year contract.
This is a 1 year?
One-year license, rather, yeah. And kind of testing the waters can be terminated at any time within the city's discretion, but we didn't want to go too far out initially.
I appreciate your desire to go back and make that stretch right, and to plan in the future to do that about once a year. I think that's a great plan, and I hope you'll follow through with it and come back and see us next year for another permit.
You know, it was quite an undertaking a year or two ago when we worked with the Pacific Railway and the city to cut the trees that were
Right.
there. And of course, there were conditions and limitations in terms of what we could cut and leave based on guidance from CP Rail. And so the idea of doing that naturally leaves us with, this is something we will need to do every year. We spend about $123,000 on that project, and so we're gonna wanna maintain that every year, not have to go back and spend another $200,000 5 years from now or 2 or 3 years from now, so.
Did that project also include the clearing for when you put up your new structures? Was that part of
Yep.
that project?
Yep. Along Ohio and Nevada, which is where the new structures are, yep.
And again, your intention is to leave the large trees.
Yeah, we can't cut those, we weren't allowed to cut those down, and we don't want to, we weren't looking to clear cut.
That may actually improve the health of those trees.
I think
Well,
so.
Over
it
time.
will,
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, we're not looking to compromise the integrity of the, you know, the land, we don't want things to erode either.
Right.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
No.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes,
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to increase the appropriations in the 2019 general and sewer fund budgets by $40,000 and $42,000 respectively for the unbudgeted costs for downtown professional services related to the DRI developments and the upgrade of the collapsed sanitary sewer line behind the Plattsburgh City Court.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion.
Yeah, what happened to the sewer line behind City Court?
It collapsed. Repair. And it was kind of tricky because it kind of collapsed partly along underneath the edge of a building, so it kind of did an awful lot of work to mitigate that.
And the $40,000 for the DRI, what's that for?
That's for the city's, how do we put it, pre-spending to accommodate the DRI developments and requirements that are gonna be reimbursed to the city once the projects have been completed or the compliance requirements are completed. This is the item that I told you about where the auditors don't like the way I was accounting for it by saying it's a cash expenditure as a prepaid expense, this receivable from the state. They said, no, we want you to make that a revenue and expense item. Even
Oh,
though it's
yeah.
not something that we budget, it distorts what we do in those line items. It's something that's not gonna happen on a normal basis. It's not a normal budgeting process. But we're accommodating their requirements to put this in and have it look like an expense in the revenue, and then eventually get reimbursed by the DRI.
All right.
And the 40,000 wasn't meaning to be flipped. The building that was being serviced by the sewer was the courthouse, the city courts, which the city leases to the court system. Any further discussion on that, MP? Seeing none, roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the asbestos abatement and demolition of the former Glens Falls National Bank and Trust Building project be awarded to Dan's Hauling and Demo Incorporated, P.O. Box 409, Wyattskill, New York 12198, in the amount of $218,110.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Moore. And as is tradition, I completely recuse myself from any issue of discussion with regard to the thing. Further discussion?
Just one quick note on this, this contract will be subject to the final completion of the GEIS and seeker, so it's not, they're not gonna start tomorrow, they're gonna wait until the GEIS has been complete, and then they'll be authorized to start.
When do we anticipate that will be completed, Dean?
I don't have a specific date, cause there's still some final studies, but year end, by the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the original talk was like early December, but I wouldn't be surprised if things are delayed a little bit.
Close enough.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
With my great pleasure, I'd like to hand down the appointment of Reginald Carter as a regular member to the planning board to complete the balance of an unexpired term to begin October 18, 2019, expiring December 31st, 2022. As many of you know, he's currently an alternate on the planning board, the first alternate. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city of Chamberlain to create capital project H5110.71 Court Street parking lot to appropriate funding for the city's $64,000 cost contribution to enhance the Clinton County Government Center parking lot per agreement entered into by the mayor as authorized by the common council on September 26, 2019.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion.
Mayor, I think you said earlier that these parking improvements that we're discussing and voting on tonight are will be covered by the financial restructuring board.
Most of it, correct.
Most of it,
And
okay.
of course, it's anticipated at some point, well, there already is a revenue source flowing in to parking and downtown improvements through the special assessment district. So there is a revenue source to make up any difference of that. Of course, part of that money is going currently to the 280 odd spots in Durkee Street. So if that Durkee Street lot was used for something else, it was incumbent upon us to find the replacement spot somewhere else in the city. But to have that also paid for in large part through the financial restructuring board is a relief. And as you all know, there is a committee also considering overall parking plans and revenues going forward as well. They continue to meet, I think their next meeting
November
is
11th.
next month, November 11th.
Next month, yes.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city of Chamberlain to create capital project H5110.72 Green Street demolition to appropriate funding the asbestos abatement and demolition of the buildings at the site as authorized by common council resolution on October 3rd, 2019.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and seconded by Councilor McFarland. Discussion. And this is just one more step to stay well ahead of the schedule that we anticipate to make this site also available to the farmers market in the spring of 2020.
And are we expecting any outside sources of funding for this
Not
project?
at this point. This would be a capital project at this point, but we do anticipate and hope that there will be some grants or DRI money that may be used to offset that. That hasn't been quite concluded or formulated at this point yet.
Well,
It hasn't.
Isn't this part of the Restore New York grant?
Yeah, I thought-
Well, part of this is the asbestos abatement, which should also be towards the farmer's market.
I don't think so. I think this was just part of the demolition of the buildings that was part of the Restore New York
Yes, the
grant.
way that we separated the projects, there were 6 structures, 2 of them were found to have had asbestos. One of them is the structure into which we are planning to move the farmer's market. But to draw a clear line of demarcation between the abatement and demolition of the MLD projects and the farmer's market relocation, which was included in the GEIS, we separated any work on the new farmer's market building out of the asbestos and abatement of the larger
Okay.
MLD site.
Thank you for that
Got it.
clarification. Gotcha. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Adding item G, resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves to and authorizes the execution of the attached September 18th, 2019 construction services proposal from CDM Smith. Funding will be from capital project H 130.66.
Moved by Counselor Gibbs and second by Counselor McFarland. And this was on the original Finance and Budget Committee agenda.
Wait, just say the number.
4.
It was 4, yeah. Gotcha.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yeah.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
There's no travel request at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or council reports?
Yeah, I'd just like to announce that the Climate Action Coalition, which is that it's a coalition of groups that have been working on environmental issues in one fashion or another. They have come together in a coalition to accomplish many goals, but one that they've decided on is the, helping to achieve the climate smart community actions in cooperation with the city. And their meeting will take place next week at 6 o'clock upstairs in the library auditorium. That's October 23rd. And they will begin, and I will communicate with them how they might be of service.
Thank you. Any other new business or council reports?
I just had a question. A couple of weeks ago, there was a group that was here, and there was a resolution asking about waiving our fee for the use of the stage, the city stage, and that wasn't seconded. I'm just wondering,
Spark, live well, be
well,
well.
what,
They withdrew their request.
they withdrew the request?
They ended up paying $200.
They did, okay, they paid the two.
Oh.
Yeah, good, we can avoid that slippery slope then.
Any additional new business or council reports?
Yes, I know the City Hall has forwarded me some emails and some voice messages from constituents and people outside of the city voicing objection over the feral cat law, if that's what we colloquially call it.
It's not a feral
feral
cat
cat
law,
law.
that's what everybody keeps calling it.
Yeah. And so, to some degree, I'd like to set the record straight.
Copy of the law.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
I didn't bring it. I see that some people are charging it that it forbids feeding stray cats, feeding feral cats. It certainly does not. Peter discussed this extensively when the law was passed. I suggest you can go look at the video there. The legislative intent is very clear, that it does not ban people who feed stray cats. It does not fine people that feed feral cats. It does outline definitions for ownership where liability can be attached, but it certainly doesn't apply to everyone. And it definitely does not apply to those performing TNR services in the city. In fact, this law really only is effective in conjunction with TNR services. The city developed this law, if you remember a year ago, there was a law that got voted down in the council. And I know that Councilors Armstrong and Councilors Ensel worked very hard with all those interested parties to come up with a system such as this that would work in conjunction with TNR. Because TNR is not a quick fix, but it is the only way to help the problem. And I certainly, everyone agrees that there was a problem. Councilor Dowdle brought up a year ago, complaints about a certain resident throwing trash in their backyard consistently for tons of feral cats. And we certainly heard complaints. And certainly when that law was up and this law was put forth to the council, we got a lot of people speaking out on both sides. We have experts speaking out on both sides. And even with the complaints that have been coming into the city, I'm hearing the complaints are based on more of misunderstanding and perhaps misdiagnosis of what the law does. And a lot of the voicemails or the emails that have been forwarded to me suggest that we should focus on making sure people don't abandon their cats, making sure that the owners of cats don't allow them to become feral. And that's actually what this law is designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not designed to punish people that go out and help feral cats. Certainly, there is a provision here that says, a person would be presumed, the presumption is a rebuttable presumption under the law, or who regularly feed a dog or cat on a person's property. And that requires regularly feeding it on your own property. If you're going out and you're, feeding feral cats at a feral cat colony, that certainly doesn't cover you. The legislative intent has been made clear. The mayor has been asked by the council to make that legislative intent and that kind of understanding of the law clear to all law enforcement personnel and code enforcement personnel. And if anyone certainly is caught up in misunderstandings of the law, we'll certainly address that. But this is not a law that forbids people from feeding cats. It's not a law that punishes people from feeding cats. I even saw online someone said it was a law that prevents people from petting cats. It certainly doesn't go that far. So if anyone has any questions on the law, they can feel free to call me, and I'd be happy to go through it with them.
And as you know, I asked Council Schneller to also look into the interpretation of the law. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he concluded that to own an animal requires both possession of the animal and control over the animal. So I think it's consistent with everything you've said as well.
Once again, encourage the public to, when they're referencing policies or legislation, to go to the primary source and examine that, and instead of listening to others' interpretations of that. Those documents are always available on the city website. That's always the best source, the direct source of information. It's just like listening to the news. There's spin, there's alternate facts or whatever, and there's the actual facts. So go to the source before you get all mobilized to be an opponent.
Any further council reports or new business?
Yes,
Councilor Cox?
last week I reported that an RFP went out for managed support services for IT in the city, and there have been some developments on that. We had a meeting this week with vendors to answer their questions, and we have an additional question period through Friday, I believe. Is that right, Matt?
That's correct.
And then we will amend the RFP with those questions, and we've also at vendors' request extended the period of time that they have to get back with proposals. We were going to finish up, we thought, at the end of October, but it's more likely the middle of November.
You have received questions from.
Oh, we at our meeting, we had, I don't know, 6 or 7 vendors represented and maybe 20 people. And they asked a lot of good questions. We've had lots of email questions. We have some more work to do, but we're getting closer on the final proposal. We also found out that this portion of city government, IT, costs the city about $235,000 a year total. So we're hoping that consolidating all these services under one vendor and having those services delivered by one vendor could save us some significant money. That would be the hope. We'll see what happens.
That's a lot of work, thank you. Any other new business or council reports? Are there any closing public comments at this time from any issues in the Speaking of the admin, please.
My name is Joan Jansen. You've seen me before, and I have a couple of comments here that I would like to go on record making because I think it's important to be heard. I'm a homeowner in Plattsburgh. I pay taxes here in Plattsburgh. And if I were going to buy a new home, one of the first things I would do was ask to have my home inspected for the home I was considering purchasing. I think that's only a common sense thing to do. I have sitting before me 6 people who I think probably have reasonable heads on their shoulder, a mayor and legal counsel. And why somebody didn't say, I think we need to have the Glens Falls National Bank inspected before we purchase it, before we spend $500,000 of taxpayer money, we need to have it inspected because it kind of sort of looks like maybe it was built during the era when they put asbestos in it. So now, as a taxpayer, I get to pony up for that building. It's going to cost the city over $700,000, which, I've been hearing from the council and hearing from the city, oh, we're so strapped for money, we're so strapped for money. Well, where do you think this is gonna come from? This is coming from taxpayers' money. So I guess what I have to say is you failed us. You failed all of us in finding out ahead of time. And I would like to go back to Glens Falls and say, hey, we've decided that we want $218,000 back because we need to pay for asbestos abatement. Can't exactly do that after it's been sold. And all I have to say is I feel like the city, myself, and you people are a bunch of suckers for buying that since it's full of asbestos. As you can tell, I'm kind of angry about it. The other thing that I'm angry about is that it appears that you think that the Durkee Street deal is a done deal already. You're making plans, you're spending money, you're doing things prior to any kind of GIS coming, General Environmental Inspection, anyway, GEIS. And I agree with the gentleman who stood up here and said, this is not the way these are done. What you are giving the public is an alternative. Yes, build it, or no, don't build it. And those are the only 2 alternatives. That shouldn't happen. It should be, here are a range of options that we can do. And if we do this, we will need this parking lot. But you're approving, why you can't wait until the GEIS is done is shameful. You're just making the assumption that this is going to be going ahead. And I've stood up here before and felt like I've said to you that this project is being railroaded through, and it is. And I don't think these things ought to be on the agenda, and I don't think they ought to go for approval until we know for sure that the project is going ahead. Thank you.
I think you just spoke a moment ago about how important it is to have accurate information for the record. So I think there's a number of corrections that we really need to make before any of these things are considered to be the verbatim truth. I think you, for instance, said that the cost of demolition and abatement was unknown, and the total cost is going to well exceed $700,000 at city taxpayer expense. Is that true?
That is not true.
I think you'd suggested that many actions, irreversible actions, are being taken right now without awaiting the results of the GEIS. Is that true?
Also not true.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other public comment, please? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Counselor Gibbs, second by Counselor Armstrong. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yeah.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you folks for coming out tonight.
Yeah, see you Wednesday. See you Wednesday. Oh, that sounds yeah.
Counselor Gibbs?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Oh, no.
I don't know how severe it is, that's why the chief had to.
Yes, I heard him leave because of structure fire.
Yeah, I knew why you were here. CHS?
Yes.
Miss Friend? Oh, Mr. Bowen, okay, tell him I said hello.
Sorry. It's okay. It's a very long story.
There you go, thank you.
Very real and quasi-administrative. Yeah.
I played Saturday.